All right, good evening, class. Professor Scales. So, I want to talk about what I need you to do for this evening. I've assigned chapters 4, 5, and 6. They are available on Blackboard. You can, in fact, go there now, read those chapters. We won't see each other this evening, and um, yeah, we won't see each other this evening. I also have given you chapters 1, 2, and 3 from the previous week. So that's been available. So you have chapters 1 through 6 available through Blackboard. Now, I want to give you an additional lecture. Last lecture I provided was in reference to um, the communication channel and communication process or the production process. So remember, we did discuss the channel. I am now recording this video. I am the sender. I am sending a message to you. And I am recording this video using a computer, and that is essentially the encoder. Several other things are involved with the encoding. That I am encoding this message in a particular language. I'm using the language of English. Um, and so that also is a portion of the encoding. I am also using computer encoding, meaning that it is hearing my voice and using my voice and my likeness, my video likeness or my visual likeness to convert that into a file that is encoding. And then what will also happen is I will upload it to YouTube and put it there so you can see it from wherever you choose, which also will require some encoding. But up front, that is me sending a message encoded in English, encoded in computer speak, if you will, some kind of ones and zeros, binary language that allows it to get to you. Um, in those encodings can be noise. Maybe I have noise on at my desk, or someone walks into my office, or the phone rings, or my daughter comes by. Also, in that encoding can be additional noise that could be maybe the hard drive or the computer is moving slow and some data is lost in translation, or when it becomes encoded and goes to YouTube, for some reason there's a problem. Now the channel therefore becomes YouTube and or Blackboard. And once that much has occurred, you will receive it. Then there will be a receiving channel that allows for noise to occur. If for some reason YouTube or Blackboard is not operable, YouTube or Blackboard isn't working for some reason, that can create a noise issue. If your computer is not working, that also is a noise issue. Anything that prevents the message from getting to you as it was intended to during the send process is noise. And then you will decode or hear it on your end. Now, why am I going over that all over again? I'll explain that in a moment. Then we discussed pre-production, production, and post-production. This is just simply a recap of last week's discussion. Pre-production essentially is the idea that we have to prepare for the production. That is writing scripts, that is finding voice talent, that is finding the directors, the editors, whatever it may be. Research, background data points. If for some reason you are a news reporter and you do all radio news, part of pre-production obviously is going and finding the information, finding the story, doing interviews with individuals if necessary. If you are doing a feature story on, let's say, Chadwick Boseman, who unfortunately, may God rest the dead, just passed this past weekend, and you want to talk about his life and his career, you may go to Wikipedia or you may go to Howard University's yearbooks or other places that you can find his biographical information. That is pre-production, and you'll start to write. You'll write a script. After you've done that, you very well may go and collect audio clips of him speaking in interviews with BET or ABC television news or whatever the case may be, and start to gather that, and you'll write your way in and out of that. And you'll continue on down that path until you arrive at the point where everything that needs to be done prior to you getting to record has been completed. Now, you very well may find that if you've missed something, that you have to go back and redo something after you've done a lot of your pre-production and even your production. What you want to do is eliminate that. Things can and will go wrong, but trying to eliminate that as much as possible. So now that we've kind of did a recap of last week, of pre-production, let's talk about production. During production, we will capture all of our chief audio. That means the interviews that we need to produce. That means the report that we need to record and any other sound elements that we want to include in there. Typically, we would like to do that live as much as possible. However, post-production is going to be necessary also. We'll record all of that. That is everything that occurs basically between hitting the record button to start and hitting the stop button to finish. If for some reason anything needs to be recorded a second or third or fourth time, what we call additional takes, you'll do that then also. Then you'll move into post-production, which is the editing process. That would be adding and sweetening the audio file. Do you need to add noise to the file, as in maybe some sound effects or music? Do you need to arrange clips in the file? Like, for instance, if there was an interview that you wanted to run, that you want to put in place, you do that there. Do you need to cut out, or particularly for audio editing, there's a lot of cutting of dead air, of mistakes, of things that aren't necessary to bring the report together. If there was noise in the background, if you paused for an extended period of time. But let me caution you here. Depending on the type of product that you're trying to produce, you don't necessarily want to edit out what makes things feel natural. What I mean by that is when you naturally have a conversation with people, often you stutter or often you misspeak slightly or what have you. Conversations feel natural when you can share with people the most organic you there is. So considering that we are going to, and this may be the first time you've heard this, we are going to try to move into the podcast realm here. What I want to make certain that you all are doing is when you're editing content so that you are making the story great. In fact, editing is almost exclusively about telling stories. It's not about adding special effects. It's not about trying to make everything airtight and perfect. It's about telling the story. It's about finding the facts and trying to lay them out in a linear fashion so that the listener can understand what you're trying to get, so that the message that you're sending goes through the channel and the listener understands what you're trying to get across to them. That's what editing is about. It is simply about making the communication chain work as efficient as possible. Now, you will eliminate noise and all those kinds of things, those coughs and stuff. Often, yes, you will eliminate that. But if for some reason, like I just made that mistake, you don't necessarily have to edit that out because it allows two people who are having a conversation on a particular topic, and for instance, in a podcast, to be their natural selves. So let's be cautious about what we edit and what we choose not to edit. Now, I want to move into the next topic here, which is this week's discussion, which is now that we're discussing editing, I want to, in fact, discuss what you can't do at all. You have at your fingertips through editing the ability to help tell stories more efficiently. You also have at your fingertips the ability to change stories and change what is being said. You can't do that. That is not ethical. When someone says something, you make it so that they have said whatever it is that they're trying to convey, and you keep the initial and final meaning in that. For instance, if you ask someone if you ask President Clinton, Bill Clinton, and man, some of you weren't even around when Bill, forget it, scratch Bill Clinton. He's too old, you don't know who he is, or you do, but you don't really remember. It doesn't matter. Either way. You ask President Trump, President Trump, have you ever attended a black college? His answer would be no. He had not attended a black college. And then you turn around and you ask President Trump, do you think that black people are qualified? And he says yes. You're not allowed to re-edit that so that it sounds as if he's actually answering no. So for instance, you have his voice saying no to answering the black college issue, and you have his voice saying yes to thinking that black people are qualified. If you re-edit this, you can in fact have him say yes, he attended a black college, and no, he doesn't think that black people are qualified. That's unethical. It's unacceptable. That will get you fired faster than anything. Let me give you an example of where ethics in media are important. Before I was born, trust me, before I was born, there was a man who was president of the United States. His name was John F. Kennedy. And John F. Kennedy was kind of this super aspirational, inspirational, hopeful, who his vice president was Lyndon Baines Johnson. And during his time, and this was in the 60s, during his time, there was another man who was on TV, and his name was Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite worked for CBS News at the time. And Walter Cronkite was, I would say, the country's preeminent newsman of the time. And Cronkite would basically, you could take whatever Cronkite said to the bank. If Cronkite said it's going to rain at 3 o'clock, you should just take that down, that it was going to rain at 3 o'clock. Now, he didn't do weather. This is not really, that wasn't his space. I'm just using that as an example. But Cronkite had a certain credibility that was lent to him by what we called then the Tiffany Network, or CBS, that it was so, that what was said there was so truthful and so well fact-checked that you didn't have to concern yourself with, is this accurate, is it inaccurate? Is Walter Cronkite a trustworthy dealer? Now, step one, I want you to look up Walter Cronkite. His name is Walter, W-A-L-T-E-R. His last name is Cronkite. That's C-R-O-N-K-I-T-E. That's Walter Cronkite. He only has been gone for about 10, 11 years or so. I think he died in 2009, 2010, 2009. He passed in 2009. He was on CBS for 20 years, I think. But Walter Cronkite, at one point, on this one day, received some news in his ear, or maybe on the phone, in the newsroom. He turned to the news cameras and he said that the president, John F. Kennedy, had been assassinated. He dipped his head down, he looked up, he saw the time, and he reiterated the time and date information that as of today, John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, had been assassinated. What's important about that moment is, first of all, it's one of the most important moments in American television history. But more importantly, is that this man could come on TV and say this, and because the news is an important thing, he had all of the attention of the world on him, and what he said next was more important than anything else that could be said at that moment. So what we have to recognize is that credibility is a must. Now, fast forward a handful of years later, in the same network, there was a man there named Dan Rather. You may have heard of Dan Rather in your time. And Dan Rather had basically inherited the Walter Cronkite role. He became the most important person in television news at CBS. And during Dan's time, particularly during the George W. Bush administration, he had gotten some hot tips about George W. Bush's service during time of war. And it was questionable about what was said about George W. Bush or not. But Dan Rather was the man at CBS. Dan Rather had been at CBS for a whole bunch of years. Like I said, he became the Walter Cronkite of his time. He had inherited Walter Cronkite's role and was the man. He was making, I don't know, several $1,000,000. And there was no doubt that he was in charge of news. In fact, at one point, he was the executive producer of all news um, at CBS. So that meant all news traveled through Walter Cronkite. I'm sorry, Dan Rather, excuse me. He started as the main anchor of CBS News in 1981. And was that and he stayed in that position for 24 years. Now, if you had a job and you worked there for 24 years, you would expect that somebody would allow you to make a mistake once or twice, maybe 2 or 3 times. What happened in Walter Cronkite's scenario is he, in fact, wanted to report that George W. Bush had not been where he was supposed to have been during his time in the military. And he took some documents that were given to him, and they weren't fact-checked properly. As a result, it turned out that the documents were inaccurate. But Dan Rather, in fact, had taken that same information, not just to the news, but to CBS's flagship and most important program, which is called 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes comes on Sunday at 7 p.m. It's been pretty much the most watched television program in America forever, all my life. And it continues to do amazing ratings, and it's an important part of American television news journalism. Because he aired a story about George W. Bush's service that was inaccurate in 60 Minutes, it jeopardized the integrity of CBS News, CBS, and more importantly, of 60 Minutes, this trusted news magazine. And for more than 24 years, he had been there, but he had been with CBS for 24 years. He had been as the news reporter, the anchor of CBS for over 24 years at that point. They let him go. Again, if you had a job making hamburgers at the Burger King and you made a mistake once or twice, they probably would let that go. He made this one mistake, and that was enough. You had to go. Despite the fact that he had been with them for 24 years or more. In fact, he worked the same day that Walter Cronkite worked on with President Kennedy's assassination, and that was November 22nd, 1963. He worked with Walter Cronkite. He was the correspondent in Dallas. So what am I getting at? Integrity is key. Integrity is key. It's the most important thing. You are charged with taking information, re-editing that information, but not changing the meaning, the intent, or the context of that information. That is bad. If you do that, that is all bad. That's unacceptable. It's unallowable. Okay. So now that we've discussed that, where are we going to next? You have these 3 chapters to discuss. So let's back up and just give a quick briefing on digital recording, which is chapter 4. It really talks a lot about digital recording and recording devices. In many ways, because the book is a little bit older and things are progressing so quickly, we are going to we're going to read that, but we're going to start interpreting it slightly differently. So recording devices. Right now, the most trusted recording device that you have is probably this thing right here. Oh, that's a picture of my niece. That's my niece right there. Oh, she's so pretty. Your phone is a great recording device. And because you have this wonderful recording device in the palm of your hand all the time, I'm going to share with you what I think you should do. You have something on an iPhone. If you choose, you can go get a piece of software called Voice Record Pro. Voice Record Pro. It is a wonderful piece of software that will allow you to use this device as a recording device where you can record an MP3, an AAC, and several audio codecs, and then email that recording to yourself. You can, as I'm starting to record now, you will see that it is running time code at the top. Let's see here, there we go. As it says 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds, etc. It also is showing you the waveform, which is right here, that demonstrates that actually my voice is making it there. And then it gives you some controls over how loud, right here, input gain. That turns my voice up or down. Now you see the waveform is very solid and very big. I've turned it down, and now the waveform has gotten much smaller. Anyhow, those of you who carry iPhones, I want you to go and secure that piece of software. There is a free version of that software that you can get. It doesn't have to cost you anything. And Voice Record Pro is also available for Android phones. I don't know anything about it exactly on the Android side. I believe it is also free. So you should be able to get Voice Record Pro for Android as well. All I want you to do now up front is to use that piece of software, follow the directions in the software, and record this. I want you to record your name, your classification, and your email address. I want you, after you've recorded that, I want you to email that to me at mjscales@nsu.edu. Record your name, your classification, and your email address, and send it to me at mjscales@nsu.edu. That is your assignment for the recording portion. Now, what we do when we record audio on any of these electronic devices, different than what we used to do with tape, is we essentially use our voice to generate an electrical charge that hits the microphone in your phone or whatever it may be, and then that becomes ones and zeros and recorded into a file. That file is wrapped in something called a codec and or a file container. That means it could either be an MP3, which I think most of us are familiar with, or an AAC, Advanced Audio Compression file, or many different types of files. Then we can take that file and we can edit that file. What you want to understand is that the microphone that's in the phone or whatever your recording device has to be able to have something called response. It responds to frequencies. Therefore, it vibrates based on what frequencies exist. And your voice is in a certain frequency range that that microphone should respond to. All right, and that's around 20 hertz. That's in the chapter, in chapter 4. Moving forward, after you get past all of that, and we get to we get through the idea of digital recording or digital encoding, then we can decode that by playing it back from our phone or a computer or something that speaks the exact same language. The beauty of digital recording is that typically it's low noise, meaning that the encoding and decoding often are relatively close to perfect. That is digital recording. In the old days, we used to do something called analog recording. We recorded to tape, or we recorded to a record, a wax record, or some other type of magnetic device that was made an analog recording. The beauty of analog recording is that it's most rich and most robust recording that you can get. You're going to get the best sound, the most warmth and depth out of it. You also get what we call the most headroom, meaning that you can yell in the microphone and not really begin to lose quality. Or you can whisper in the microphone and not lose quality. On the other, conversely, with digital has low headroom. Yelling in the microphone will cause digital to become unusable. It will become what we call overmodulating, and it will sound terrible. Also, whispering often in the digital microphone will lend itself to allowing a lot of additional noise, air conditioner noise, etc., to enter into the microphone because of how the digital process works. So it's important that when you do go with digital, that you start to consider making sure that your settings are correct and that you're speaking into the microphone properly. All right. Then after you finish reading 4, I want you to go to chapter 5. Chapter 5, in fact, covers microphones and sound. And what I want to talk about mainly where microphones are concerned are a handful of different microphones that exist. We're not going to go into it deep. The microphones that you will be most often kind of concerned with are going to be lapel microphones, the ones that clip to your clothing, handheld microphones or stick microphones, and then shotgun microphones that are on cameras, and then lastly, device mounted microphones like the one built into your phone. Let's talk about how all of these pretty much operate. Almost all of them, except for shotgun microphones, are almost always unidirectional. A handheld microphone is unidirectional. What does unidirectional mean? It means the pickup pattern for the microphone, how it receives sound, is in one direction. Imagine the head of this screwdriver is a microphone. It's turning green because I'm on a green screen. Let's not use that one. Yeah, let's forget it. We'll use it. I have to talk into the head of the microphone to get the best possible quality. And I don't talk into it from behind or on the side, but directly into the microphone to get the best possible quality. That's unidirectional. Some microphones are omnidirectional, meaning that you can speak anywhere in this presence as long as you're close enough. It doesn't matter where. It's receiving, its pickup pattern is all around. Not unidirectional like dead on head, but omnidirectional like the entire umbrella. Some are bidirectional. Most often you see a bidirectional microphone that will allow sound to come in this side or this side. Sometimes they're in fact crossed, meaning this one is pointing over to the left microphone is pointing to the right, and the right microphone is pointing to the left, allowing people to talk directly towards one another. That's a bidirectional microphone. And then you have shotgun microphones, which often go between different pickup patterns. Sometimes shotgun microphones are very unidirectional, and often they can, more expensive and more sophisticated ones, often have a switch that will allow you to switch from unidirectional to omnidirectional, and they pick up all ambient sound. For the purposes of what we're going to do for the podcast idea in interviews, the most important type of microphone to use is a unidirectional microphone. And when you use a unidirectional microphone, you want to point it at the subject that's speaking. The reason why unidirectional microphones are best for interviews is because they pretty much reject sound that is outside. It focuses its pickup pattern directly on the person who's speaking, and therefore sound to the left and to the right are rejected, and you get very high fidelity recordings. And it eliminates, as we continue to talk about this, noise. If we did want to use an omnidirectional microphone, we would use that so that we could pick up the sound of the train that's going by. The report would be about this train track that is where cars continue to come and accidents have occurred. Your omnidirectional mic will pick up the sound of the train coming by, or cars sliding through, or the lights and bells that are dinging and clanging, warning that a train is coming. That's what an omnidirectional microphone is supposed to do. Pick up ambient natural sound. A unidirectional picks up the chief interview sound. So I want you to give that much thought. Chapter 5 also discusses how microphones work. It discusses waveforms, and it discusses, as I said, pickup patterns, all those different things. I want you to go over that, frequency response and whatnot. And then the last chapter I need you to read is chapter 6. And chapter 6 is about electronic editing. And I don't want to get too far into electronic editing, but what we would typically use in this scenario is Adobe Audition. What I think we will probably have to use is going to be Audacity. Audacity is available for both Mac and Windows, so despite what you may have, there should be a version available for you. And what that's going to allow you to do is to bring in a file and make edits, and then export that file back out. So you'll use your phone or your computer or some device to record your audio. After you've done that, you'll bring that file into Audacity. You will cut out the bad or the things that you don't want, or rearrange the edit so that you can, get to the story faster or what have you. And then you'll export that and you'll send it to me. Now, I'm not asking you to do that today. I need you to download Audacity. And you can go to Audacity. There'll be a link to it in the assignments, and it'll be attached to this file. I need you to download Audacity, get that, and then just open it up. Inspect the software. Go through all the different links in the software. Find out there's a tutorial. In fact, I'll find the tutorial and I'll connect it to you. And just be prepared to discuss next Tuesday. All right? Till next week, be safe. Stay away from people who are coughing. Wash your hands, and use your best judgment. Peace.